Yo, this is the Scarcity Studios YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. And our sponsors are Alpha Claims and Hire Birmingham, the leading and best accident management company. Get a replacement car anywhere in 1 hour. I really appreciate you joining me today. And this story comes from Wales. And on the 19th of October 2020, Andrew Jones, 53, from Wales has been jailed for a minimum of 30 years for the murder of his longtime friend, Michael O'Leary. Michael O'Leary's family initially believed that he had committed suicide. A message was sent to his wife that said "I'm sorry" with a kiss, and it prompted a massive search and rescue operation from his home village in Wales, where he was very popular. It went on for 48 hours and the 55-year-old's Nissan car was discovered at the banks of a river in Carmarthenshire. And imprints of his trainers were found towards the water, and people had assumed that he'd taken his own life. There were certain alarm bells that had begun to ring during the investigation, and one of Michael O'Leary's friends noticed this in the text message. Michael wouldn't have written in English, he always messaged his friends and family in Welsh. The friend, Mr. Rees, knew Mr. O'Leary very well for a local rugby club. And he also happened to be an experienced former chief inspector of the police. They also went to Australia together in 2013 during the rugby tour of Australia. He said he was great company and a hard-working family man who thought the world of his children. Word spread through the village on the 27th of February 2020 that Michael O'Leary was missing, and people assembled at the local clubhouse to search for him. Even the actor Julian Lewis-Jones, everyone came out, and that was the amount of love and respect that everybody had for Mike. Hundreds searched the area on the Tuesday and the Wednesday, and under the direction of the police and the mountain rescue. On Thursday the 29th of January, the police stopped searching and the village was rocked by the devastating news. Andrew Jones, one of Mr. O'Leary's best friends and a well-known figure at the rugby club, had been arrested on suspicion of murder. It was a massive shock to all of the friends, said the chairman of the rugby club to the newspapers at the time. Jones and O'Leary were part of the same group of friends and they went on holiday together regularly. They were also among 5 or 6 builders working free of charge on the rugby club to build an extension for the local community. Andrew did the plastering and Mike did the footings and things like this. The police first became interested in Jones when they spoke to him at the hospital the day after his friend's disappearance. His wife had been admitted to hospital the previous night, suffering memory loss after falling out of bed. He told detectives that he saw Mr. O'Leary from a distance on Saturday night and he picked up his wife and daughter from the rugby club, but added that he knew that he'd been taking antidepressants and was finding it hard at work. Detectives noted that Jones had dried blood on his left nostril and also a scratch on his cheek. But that night, unbeknown to police, Jones burned Mr. O'Leary's body in a pile of wooden pallets in the builder's yard behind his home. He used a digger to put the remains in a skip and arranged for one of his unsuspecting employees to remove it the following morning. The next day, detectives discovered phone records that showed that not only Jones's wife Rhianon had been having an affair with Mr. O'Leary, but that Jones had known about it since September 2019. They had also discovered that Mr. O'Leary's phone and a phone connected to Rhianon was also found at one of Andrew Jones's properties on the night of the disappearance. He was questioned late that day when his story changed. He admitted that he lured Mr. O'Leary to the farm to confront him about the affair by pretending to be his wife. But he claimed that the three had driven off unharmed, and the following day Jones had written an official statement to the police before he was arrested. He asked if they had found Michael, and that was the few comments that he'd made to the arresting police. His property was searched and police officers seized phones and 8 firearms. One of them was a Colt .22 rifle. As part of the investigation, police examined CCTV in the area and spotted an unusual sight on the evening of the disappearance. A cyclist was wearing a high visibility jacket and building site clothing and travelling between where Mr. O'Leary's vehicle was found and also the farm. On the 3rd of February, Jones was formally charged with Mr. O'Leary's murder. and from this point until the trial, he refused to answer any questions the detectives asked him. Over the course of the next few weeks, police undertook painstaking searches of the builder's yard behind his home in Carmarthen, and also the farm. Slowly, a picture of what happened to Mr. O'Leary began to form. At the farm, they found bullet casings, bloodstains on the blades of forklifts, and also bloodstained pushbike. This blood was later found to be a match for Mr. O'Leary's DNA profile. And on the 14th of March, police made an even more crucial and gruesome breakthrough. At the bottom of a rusty barrel in Jones's yard, they found a 4-inch piece of small intestine. The tissue's DNA profile matched Mr. O'Leary's, and it remains the only body part of the body that they ever found. After excavating and sifting through an enormous amount of earth at the yard, tiny fragments of unidentifiable burnt human bone were also discovered. Mr. O'Leary's blood was found in a pair of jeans discovered in Mr. Jones's house, and also on a pair of trainers, and also in a rugby shirt that he was wearing, and in his Audi Q7. At Jones's murder trial, evidence of his careful and ruthless planning became very clear. In 2019, he bought a security camera to spy on his wife in the family home, which he used to discover the passcode to her phone in order to read her messages. In January, Jones's teenage daughter, Carrie, discovered that her mother was having an affair after she heard her parents arguing. She was close with Mr. O'Leary and looked up to him. The discovery devastated her, and she sent a text to him saying, "I know everything. I know the messages. I'd like to thank you for being so disrespectful to my father." He replied, "All I have to say is I'm sorry for what I've done, and I will make sure I keep my distance. I'm deeply sorry for the hurt I have given you." Jones then used his daughter to spy on her mother when he quietly planned his murder. On Saturday, January the 25th, CCTV at Jones's home showed him moving pallets around his yard in preparation to burn his best friend's remains. That night, while a ladies' night event was held at the rugby club, more CCTV images showed Mr. O'Leary talking to Rhianon Jones at the bar before her daughter intervened. The mother and daughter argued that night, and Jones said that his wife had realised the damage the affair had caused and asked him for forgiveness. Jones then stole his wife's secret phone, which she used to communicate with Mr. O'Leary, and began texting him, pretending to be her. He arranged to meet up with him at a remote lockup on Monday night, and when Mr. O'Leary arrived at the farm expecting to see his lover, he was executed in cold blood by her husband with a .22 rifle. Jones then put on Mr. O'Leary's trainers and put the push bike in the boot of his Nissan car and drove it to the banks of the river, where he then sent an apparent suicide note to the O'Leary family. He then cycled back to the murder scene and used a forklift to place Mr. O'Leary's body on the boot of his wife's Audi and drove back to his yard on Cwmffrwd Road. He hid the body under a rubbish pile on his yard before burning it the next night. Jones told the court that he only lured Mr. O'Leary to the farm to frighten him, and that he died as a tragic accident when they struggled over his rifle. He said that he panicked and destroyed the evidence. The jury dismissed the story, and the prosecution, William Hughes QC, told Swansea Crown Court it was a carefully considered ambush, and that the destruction of Mr. O'Leary's body was carried out very ruthlessly. In more than 30 years working for the police, retired inspector and friend of the victim, Mr. O'Leary, said that he never secured a guilty verdict with no body. And technology of mobile phone tracking, CCTV, DNA and forensics has improved so much, and this helped to maintain this conviction. In 5 days they brought the case together in what was a seemingly impossible case, and they charged Andrew with the murder. And they also said it wasn't a crime of passion, he planned it, it was premeditated. And he also went to Michael's funeral knowing that he wouldn't allow them to have the body. So it's a very upsetting story for all the families involved. How many people's lives were affected by this one affair. Andrew Jones, 53, from Cwmffrwd Road in Carmarthen, denied murdering his longtime friend Michael O'Leary, but was convicted after a murder trial, which heard how the victim had found out his wife was having an affair. Jones was sentenced by Justice Jefford at Swansea Crown Court, having been convicted of murder by a majority of a jury of 11-1. He was jailed for life to serve a minimum term of 30 years, and he must serve this before he can be considered for parole. The judge described the killing as a planned ambush, and Michael O'Leary did something wrong, but he did not deserve to pay with his life. So many families destroyed by the actions of the people involved in this story. And this man also will pay for this by spending the majority, if not all of his life in prison, while his children grow up without him. So my condolences to the family of Michael O'Leary and to the children of Andrew Jones, who have lost their father as well. So I really appreciate you joining me today. Please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. Follow us again online as well. And I'll be back again very shortly with some more news. Peace.